Today I am going to take this painting that I did in a live stream and add thick paint to it in Corel Painter. Hi everyone, Steve Elliott here. Hope you're all having a great day. This is part 2 of a painting that I did as a live stream. This part wasn't done in a live stream. This is something that I did offline, and I decided that the painting just wasn't finished. It looked like an underpainting, and I wanted to get in there and start adding a lot more detail. So I thought the best way to do that would be to use thick paint to add a little bit of texture into this painting. So that's what I'm doing. You'll notice, well, not at this point actually, I did add, halfway through the painting, I added some extra brushes to my thick paint palette because it appeared that the ones I were using, they didn't respond to tilting the brush, and that is the grainy thick and wet is the one I'm using now, and I just couldn't tilt it. So after a while I felt it was all getting a little bit messy because I couldn't tilt the brush. But anyway, here we go. You'll see I started off, and straight away just putting this thick paint on, it adds something totally different to the painting. And I skipped back there to the layer below the thick paint to add a bit of shadow into it because I felt that the shadows didn't work with the thick paint. They were like sort of embossed on top, whereas the stonework works really nice because each brush stroke is almost a stone, but I just wasn't feeling it with the thick paint in the shadows, so I went back to the layer underneath for those. So what I wanted, I felt that these two windows just were not working in the finished painting that I did in the live stream. They just needed a little bit more detail and form to give them a bit of dimension and shape that just wasn't there. It's almost abstract. So you can see I'm using the thick paint to add all of this detail that I wasn't getting. There I'm back on the layer below the thick paint, just putting in some shadows. So I'm going in on this second window, and I am struggling with this brush because it just wouldn't tilt. I don't know if I was doing something wrong, if I could change the settings in some way, but it just wasn't happening. I also changed the canvas lighting from 10% to 2%. And you can see there, look, I just got fed up with it and thought, this is gotta go. And like magic, there are now 6 more brushes, well, 4 more brushes actually, added to the palette. And I've moved all my thick paint to the bottom of the palette. So one of the original ones is the first one, and then I've used a filbert brush and a flat brush, and they do rotate. So, and also the paint wasn't quite so thick as you ploughed it on, which I felt was quite nice. So I'm now using a different brush. I'm using the Real Bristle Oils Filbert to repaint into the wet thick paint. I'm not on a different layer. I'm just repainting into it to redefine those windows. And you can see now, I'm thinking that I'm getting a lot better shape to what I was getting before. And then I duplicate it because I thought, why paint the whole thing again? Obviously, I'm not going to leave it like that because that would look, it just looks copied and pasted. I merge it down onto another layer, so then I have to just erase away the thick paint on the thick paint layer so you could see it. And then I start making differences, adding bits and things, and just changing out. It just saved me having to redraw the old window again. But now I can go in and make them very different by adding colour, different brush strokes, and different little bits of detail. You see there, look, I tried painting that shadow in. It doesn't work. It just did not work putting it in on that thick layer. So I'm pretty much just, all the colour is being sampled with the Alt key to pick out local colour, nothing else. And I'm just going in, adding thick paint, putting in those pillows, and then putting in sort of recesses between it, and just picking out detail with this thick paint. And I think I felt that I needed to add some shadow and some thick, really thick brush strokes just scraped across the canvas. Then I wanted to just reflect the colour in the pavement into that wall, just to warm it up a little bit, and then sort of pretty much paint the whole thing out again. And then obviously, because the wall is now popping with this thick paint, I've got to do all of the people that are in the scene. And it just makes such a difference. It totally lifts the painting. You can see the difference between the building, the bottom part, it looks lively and it's full of life. There's lots happening, and the top part is flat and it looks quite boring, I guess. So I'm decide to get that thick paint going up into the top part of that building as well. Not worrying about detail too much. Not worrying about the detail at all. I moved the architectural feature of that kind of facade down. I'd actually got it in the wrong place. And then deepened up the sky a little bit more. And then I used a I'll tell you in a minute when it comes back on the screen. I'm using a grainy scraper to push that paint about, which is really, really nice. And then I start messing about with the shadows thing again and doing an overlay. I was looking at the photograph and felt it wanted to be a bit warmer, so I'm still using thick paint, but on an overlay, on another layer that I've set the blend mode to overlay, and I just didn't like it. And I felt that I tried it a few ways, just being a bit more discreet with it, but it wasn't working. It didn't work for me in this style at all. So in the end, I just put little strokes of local colour in. And then I decided that I'd totally missed this tree on the left hand side that was in the photo, and I wanted that in because I felt it framed the scene in the middle of the painting quite nicely. And the thick paint was great for the trees because I could sort of get these branches in and then just smudge the paint for the little twigs and stuff. Going back into the figures again, just making them stand off the canvas with this thick paint. And I really like the the scrapers, the palette knife scrapers that I was using, to the grainy scraper, just to sort of pull that paint across the canvas and leave all these nice textures and things. So now it's shaping up to be a finished painting, whereas before it was definitely not. I wasn't feeling it. So I go in on these Valentine lights, these heart-shaped lights, get that thick paint on, and then use that grainy scraper again just to push the paint about a bit and soften it off, diffuse it somewhat. Again, I sort of put a few lines on, just vary these cables that are holding the old things up, and then use that grainy scraper to smudge them out a little bit as well. Then I realised I totally missed these flagpoles, and I felt they helped fill quite a boring part of the painting where there was nothing happening. And I used the Real Bristle Oils flat brush and just sort of paint them in, and then get this flag in. I put an orange flag in to start with, and when I looked at it, I felt that although the flag was orange in the photo, because it was the only kind of real bit of orange in the whole of the painting, it just stood out too much. Using that scraper again to soften off those flagpoles, and it just drew your eye straight to the flag, so that had to have a little bit of red just dabbed into it. So I'm just sort of, what I wanted to do then is add a few indications of lights and things. So I was doing it with the thick paint, and then I changed the blend mode to screen, because it really made the white pop. But I just felt that I got a bit carried away with it, look, and I'm putting it everywhere, and I just overdid it a little bit. So I just tried knocking the opacity down somewhat until I got a balance that I liked. And then I used that scraper again, the grainy scraper, just to soften off the paint. And then I added a few accents of colour. And I'd discovered this scraper and I loved it. I was using it everywhere, pushing colour about, and just adding little bits of sparkle, tidying up those figures where I'd messed them up a bit with the coloured paint that I'd dabbed on. So I'm really getting into Corel Painter. I'm sort of working out a style that works for me with a combination of all the different types of paints. I like doing a painting with the regular paintbrushes that haven't got all that texture on, and then choosing where I want the texture to go rather than working on the complete painting. I'm also sort of sussing out which brushes you can have really big and they don't cause lag, where one or two others might do. So sort of sorting all of that out. And that is it. That is my Valentine's Day painting of Loughborough Town Centre. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, a big thumbs up as always is much appreciated, and if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I have lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.